All right, today we're going to break down a company called DroidDevLab. They've really carved out a niche for themselves by focusing on engineering apps for, well, the biggest mobile platform on the planet. So, what do they actually do, and why did they decide to get so specialized? Let's dive in. Okay, let's kick things off with a pretty staggering number. Android has its hands on over 70% of the entire global mobile market. I mean, with that kind of dominance, the question for any real business isn't if you need to be on Android, it's how you build an app that's going to win there. And that right there, that brings every single business leader, every product owner to this huge fork in the road. And make no mistake, this isn't just some techie decision. The choice you make here is going to have a massive impact on your app's performance, how your users feel about it, and whether you can even scale it down the line. So, one path you can take is called native development. The best way to think about this is it's like getting a key custom made for one specific lock. It's built for just one job, and because of that, it works perfectly. It's smooth, it's secure, every single time. Now, the other path is cross-platform. This approach is kind of like having a master key. And yeah, it's super useful because it can open a bunch of different locks, right? But it might not be a perfect, seamless fit for any single one of them. You usually end up with some small compromises. And this is where it gets really interesting, you know? This chart lays out the choice so clearly, especially for serious enterprise-level apps. If you need the absolute best performance, direct access to the phone's camera and GPS, and a user experience that feels 100% real and authentic, well, the native approach has a major advantage. Which brings us right back around to DroidDevLab. This quote, this is basically their entire philosophy in a nutshell. They made a very conscious decision to specialize in just one of these paths, the native path, because they believe it's the only way to truly engineer a first-class mobile experience. So why go all in on this one approach? Well, think about it. For the really complex, sensitive apps in fields like finance and healthcare, things like speed and security aren't just nice-to-haves, they are absolutely essential. Native development lets them deliver that raw speed, that deep hardware integration, and the beefed-up security that these big-time apps just have to have. Okay, so we get the why behind their focus on native development. But what about the how? How do they actually build these things? Let's take a look at their process. They call it a full-cycle process. Really, it just means they handle the whole shebang. They're there from the very beginning, figuring out the business goals, then they design the user experience, build the app, get it onto the Google Play Store, and they even stick around for maintenance and support after it's live. And here's something that really shows off their expertise. One of their specialties is taking an older, maybe kind of clunky app built in Java and giving it a total overhaul. They move it over to a modern Kotlin architecture, and the result is a product that's way more stable, easier to maintain, and a whole lot faster. And how do they get those results? By using a totally modern toolkit. They're staying way ahead of the curve with Kotlin, that's Google's official language, and modern frameworks like Jetpack Compose. All this really means is they're using the best, most efficient tools out there to build an app that's fast, stable, and built to last. All right, that all sounds great on paper, but does this super specialized native-first approach actually deliver real results for their clients out in the wild? For one of their FinTech clients, the result wasn't just, a faster app. It was a measurable 15% jump in user retention. That means more people kept coming back to use the app again and again. That's a huge deal. And that's the crucial point right there. The tech decision to move from Java to Kotlin directly created a better, faster experience for users, and that experience led directly to a major business win. That's the connection they're always trying to make. Here's another great example from a totally different and really complex field: medical devices. For this client, the ability to flawlessly connect with Bluetooth hardware was non-negotiable. It just had to work. DroidDevLab's deep knowledge of the native Android system was the absolute key to making that project a success. Now, whenever you're thinking about a specialized company like this, a few key questions always pop up. So let's just quickly run through some of the most common ones.
First up, we've said the word a few times, but why the big focus on Kotlin instead of the older language Java?
The answer's pretty straightforward, really. Kotlin is the modern standard. It's officially recommended by Google themselves. It just lets developers write cleaner code faster, and it has these built-in safety features that prevent a lot of common app crashes, which means a much more reliable app for you and me. Okay, next big question, what about time? If you have an idea, how long does it actually take to get that first version, an MVP, out the door? Well, naturally, it's going to depend on how complex the app is. A basic first version, you could be looking at 2 to 3 months. But for a more complex enterprise app with tons of security and data stuff, it's going to be closer to 6 months, maybe more. They'll give you a really detailed timeline after they do an initial discovery phase. And this is a really important detail that people sometimes forget. Their work doesn't just stop when the coding is done. They handle the entire publication process. That means navigating all of Google's complicated guidelines and privacy rules to make sure your app actually gets approved and goes live without a hitch. So that brings us to the final takeaway as we wrap up our look at what DroidDevLab is all about. For any business out there that's thinking about building a serious Android app, the next step with them is pretty simple. It just starts with a conversation. They offer a free technical consultation to talk through the project, and they can usually get you a rough estimate super quickly, like within a day. So we'll end this whole explainer with a question for you to think about. Knowing what you know now about the clear differences in power, security, and performance, if you want to win on the world's biggest mobile market, is a native solution the key to unlocking your app's true potential?